So, what do you make of today's prices? I feel like they're just crushing at this point, right? No matter where you go, prices just seem to be going up. Why do you think that is? Now, you might have heard of things like tariffs or inflation, interest rates, and yeah, kind of. Those do contribute to higher prices, but I don't think they're the driving force. I mean, prices were rising before Trump came into power and started slapping tariffs all over the place. I think it's something else, and I notice it rarely gets talked about. When I was in business school, I had to take a business strategy class, and the teacher it was kind of like a passing comment. He said, your job, right, your main concern as a future business executive is to get as close to a monopoly as legally possible. Now, I'm nowhere near a business executive, but that always kind of stuck in my mind, right? And it reminds me a lot of this quote from Sun Tzu. He's the guy who wrote The Art of War. He says, to see the sun and the moon, it's no sign of a keen sight. Right? Everybody can see them. To hear thunder is no sign of a quick ear. I mean, everybody can hear it. Right? All men can see the tactics whereby I conquer. What none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. And so there's a lot of people talking about tariffs and interest rates and inflation and whatnot. But to me, that's just like listening to the noise of thunder. Everybody gets that, sure. Very few people are talking about the strategies that are causing our prices to rise. Very few people are talking about monopolies. I would like to talk about it with you. And I would like to talk about what we can do to bring some of these prices down. Notably, the price of your electricity if you live in Georgia. And if you just want to go ahead and skip to that part, by all means, please feel free to do so. If not, I appreciate you sticking around. So get as close to a monopoly as legally possible. Two things to ask ourselves. First of all, why do you want to become a monopoly? Right? If they are illegal, why do you want to get as close to one as possible? What's because it's what's most profitable. Now, I think it would serve us well to remind ourselves that for-profit corporations exist for profit, right? There is no ideology, there's no building a better world, right? What is profitable, not what is moral, is the driving force. And a good question to ask yourself is, what does it profit someone, right, to gain the whole world if they lose their soul in the process? And that's what we're seeing, right? These monopolies, they want the entire world for themselves. Now, corporations don't have any souls. That's why they're fine with crushing yours. Here's what it looks like. If you're the only one in town, you can dictate whatever price you want or need your product to be. If you're a monopoly, you don't have to be competitive. You don't have to be efficient. You don't have to be good at what you do, right? You can just set whatever price you want. And if it's a product that someone needs, they're just going to have to pay up for it. So why are they illegal then? If you have a monopoly, you are taking away the ability for someone to choose. And that is something that is fundamentally the only thing that is yours in life. Our ability to choose is what makes us who we are as individuals and as a society, right? You take away someone's choice, you take away their freedom. So let's say you're a monopoly. How do you set the price? Well, you can just go the Kroger route and just, put a sticker, but really what you can do is control the supply, right? If you know how supply and demand works, the less of a product there is, right, the more rare it is, the higher the price is going to be, right? So a monopoly can say, hey, we're only going to pump out X amount of beef. We're only going to build so many houses. We're only going to manufacture so many cars. And if you do that, the price is going to stay high, but there's also an added benefit. If you're not building as much, you don't have to hire as many people, right? And if you're a monopoly, you can set the price on wages, right? If you say, hey, we are only planning to build X amount of houses, we only need Y amount of workers. And there's always going to be someone who's a little bit more desperate than you that'll do the same job for less, right? So on one end, you'll see your prices go up. And on the other, you'll see your wages go down. That's why you're feeling crushed. And this is a trend that is going on in every industry at every level. And we're only going to talk about a few, right? Because we could go on for hours on this. But let's say your goal is to become a monopoly. How do you get there? You might think it's just by either mergers and acquisitions or being better than the competition, you'll eventually get there. And while that can happen, I would suggest that the preferred strategy is through government proximity and partnership. Let's say you're Walmart, and Walmart has a huge market share in the supermarket industry. I think they're at something like 25%, right? And in a lot of towns across the US, especially in rural areas like the one that I live in, they're the only ones in town. So they can set the price for everything that you need. And I mean that literally. They have everything, right? They can set whatever price they want for it. But they're also usually the only ones hiring. That means they can set whatever low wage they want. And if you set the wage low enough, like Walmart does, well, then a lot of your employees qualify for food stamps. Now you might say, okay, so what? It means that Walmart is outsourcing its labor costs to the public, to you. This is basically a government subsidy that lets them pay lower wages, right? And it makes it really hard for other stores to compete with them. Your tax dollars help Walmart employees pay for their food because Walmart doesn't pay them enough. Now here's a kicker. Where do those employees spend those food stamps? Walmart. See how that works? So how do you get as close to monopoly as legally possible? Well, you either try to control or change that which is legal by getting your lawmakers elected. What do you make of this example? 4 companies own about 85% of the total beef production in the US, right? Tyson Foods, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef. How have your beef prices been doing lately? All right, keep going up, and there is no sign that they will come down. Here's why, right? This is why. They control the production, so they can control the supply and price for everyone. And the only choice you are left with is if you're going to eat beef or not, right? There really is no other option. What are you going to do? Go vegan? I don't think so. Now, 2 out of the 4 companies are not American at all, right? They're Brazilian. And one of them, JBS, was fined over $3 billion in Brazil for bribing officials. And they were fined, I think it was $250 million in the US for the same thing. So this is something they do, right? This is kind of like their MO. Well, JBS was the largest donor to President Trump's inaugural fund at $5 million. And keep in mind, this is not an American company. But 5 to 6 months later, they were finally able to trade on the American Stock Exchange, something they have been trying to do for over a decade. I'm going to give you one more example because this is something that we can actually do something about. At the president's inauguration, he was surrounded by the CEOs of all these different tech companies, right? And then later on, they had a meeting where all these tech CEOs were just fawning over the president and thanking him for his leadership. These are the companies that are spending billions on AI. And there's a lot of talk about AI, right? How it might displace or replace workers, right? That's outsourcing jobs, or how it might make jobs easier or just more efficient or just better. Well, and that is a debate that we can have. But again, to me, thunder, right? Sun and moon. That's the thing that everyone is talking about. What a lot of people aren't talking about is how these tech monopolies are building all these data centers, and these data centers consume a huge amount of electricity. What does that mean for you? Well, just think about it, right? If the demand for electricity goes up, or if the supply of available electricity goes down, what happens to the price? It goes up, right? Supply and demand. So you may never use ChatGPT in your life. You may never use Google AI or any of those AIs out there, but your electric bill is going to go up if we don't do anything about it. So let's do something about it. That way, if you are one of the workers that gets laid off because of AI, at least you won't have to cry in a dark room because the electric bill is too high. Right? Choose your battles. And here is the battle I am choosing to participate in, and the one I'm inviting you to join me in as well, if you live in the state of Georgia, because we are having an election this November 4th. It is a statewide election for the Georgia Public Service Commission. Now, if you don't know what that is, these are the people that set the rates, right? The electric rates that Georgia Power gets to charge, its customers. Now, we have this agreement because Georgia Power is a state-granted monopoly, and in exchange, the state has some oversight over it, right? So we got these four people, right, that are vying for your vote, right? It is a partisan thing, but I would encourage you to look beyond that and see what it is that the candidates are talking about and what they are not talking about as well, right? So let's take a quick look here. First time we're going to vote about this in 5 years. If you've seen your rates go up in the past 5 years, this is the group that has allowed it to do so. So guy number one, right? This dude, Tim, I'm going to say Echols. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Let's go with Tim. All right, Tim, he's been there since 2010, right? Reelected in 2016. Staunch supporter of nuclear energy, solar power, and electric vehicles. What's his view on Georgia power bills? All right, so he signed off this summer on freezing basic electric rates. Now, freezing, right, it means they won't go up, but it also means what? They won't go down, right? And that freezing is good until 2028, right? What happens afterwards? Who knows? What's his view on data centers? He says that it is up to the PSC, right? Again, that's the Georgia Public Service Commission, to ensure that data centers get the electricity needed to operate. What does that tell you about his priorities, right? What is he not saying? The priority is for these data centers, right? Not you. So keep that in mind. His challenger, Alicia Johnson. What I'm interested here is what are her views on these data centers, right? Now, she wants to, she wants data centers to invest in communities where they operate. All right, okay, sure. She wants them to have an annual report card as proof. Now, you can you can debate the usefulness of that, but okay, sure. The idea is, right, that they would have to show proof on whether or not data centers have paid their share of electricity, or if the costs have shifted disproportionately to residential customers, right? What's that again? It's outsourcing. They want to see if they are outsourcing their costs onto you. Okay, next person up, we have another Johnson, this guy by the name of Fitz, right? So he's been here since 2021. Now, during his time, right, he has taken several key votes to have that have raised Georgia Power's customer bills. In fact, he voted to approve a series of rate increases that have kicked in each year since 2023. All right, so if the past 2 years your rate has gone up, this is why. Now, here's what's interesting. Now, he voted to allow Georgia Power to push most of the $10 billion in costs from the over-budget expansion of that nuclear plant to the company's ratepayers. And this is the power plant he's talking about, right? So somewhere up in North Georgia, significantly over budget by $10 to $11 billion. And the plan is to have Georgia Power's ratepayers pay for most of the overruns, right? Again, that's outsourcing, the cost to you. Now, again, he voted to keep, the power rates steady for now. Next year, the utility, so that's Georgia Power, will formally ask to charge customers for damages caused by Hurricane Helene and for its outstanding fuel tab. Now, what's that? Outsourcing. That's what every business is going to try to do, right? You increase your revenue, you decrease your cost. Best way to decrease your cost is to outsource it to someone else, right? What's his view on data centers? Now, he says he believes Georgia's reliable energy supply has attracted data centers to the state and that serving the facilities will put downward pressure on customers' bills. But this is just my mind, right? Like at supply and demand. Unless these data centers are building a ton of, let's say, like solar power plants or whatnot, and Facebook is kind of doing that. Yeah, I can see that, but they would have to produce enough for their own consumption and then some in order to increase the supply to the point that the price goes down. So that is Fitz Johnson, right? His challenger, a guy by the name of Peter Hubbard. So Hubbard says, hey, the PSC hasn't done enough to keep bills down. And you would say that, right? If you're running for election, sure. Now you be the judge of that. Here's what I find interesting. Remember that $10 billion overage, right? Like over budget that power plant had. Hubbard argued that some of the costs should have fallen on investors in Georgia Power's parent company, right? Southern Company. He says, we could have asked shareholders to shoulder more of the burden of the mismanagement and cost overages, right? Georgia Power is a monopoly. You don't get a choice on whether or not they build these power plants. You don't have a say on how they are run, right? If they're mismanaged. What monopolies try to do is take away your say on whether or not you have to pay for them, right? And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to shift or outsource the cost onto you, right? Not the owners of the company. No. We send it over to you. So these are a few things to keep in mind, right? I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, and I'm not going to tell you to vote for or against a certain party. But I do think there's some wisdom in considering what these candidates have to say and how it will impact you personally. I started out this video asking you about your thoughts on prices that we pay. And I meant this in a very tangible financial way, right? The prices that you pay at the grocery store, for instance. But there's this quote that's often in my mind, and it's more of a paraphrase, really, from Plato. He says, the price good men pay for not paying attention to politics is to be ruled by evil men. And I do think this is certainly true in the realm of politics, but I think it applies in a lot of other realms as well, right? I don't think it's a ridiculous idea that we are currently being ruled by these monopolies because we haven't been paying attention. So I would ask you to do two things. First, pay attention to these things. Pay attention to what people are saying, what they're not saying. And then the second thing that I would ask of you is to get involved, to participate. There's this final quote that I'll leave with you. It's from Marcus Aurelius. And it's a little out of context, but I think, again, it applies to a lot of different principles. He says, get busy with life's purpose and toss aside empty hopes, right? A lot of people just, hope that things will get better somehow, right? And I think that's just wishful thinking. Things are what you make of them, right? So get active in your own rescue if you care for yourself at all, and do it while you can. And this is something we can do for the next 3 weeks or so, right? If you are a Georgia resident, early voting has already started. I think it goes all the way until October 31st. And then, of course, Election Day on November 4th. Make sure you are registered. Make sure you go out to vote. Bring someone if you can. And if you found this video insightful or helpful, send it to someone who cares enough to play their part in our community to make it a better one. I'll see you at the polls. If you made it all the way through to the end of this video, I really thank you for your time. If you enjoyed the format of this video, why don't you go ahead and check out the first one I made about anger in the media industry, or basically monopoly, right? And how they're trying to control us that way. The next video is going to be about Jesus and Christianity in our government. And I come from a pretty unique background when it comes to these topics. Just as the next video after that, I think that I'm going to make is going to be about ICE, right? The Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency. And I'm in a unique situation because I actually work on the base where they come to be trained. So I have some very unique insight. So if you're interested in these types of things, by all means, stick around, subscribe, and send it to someone you think might enjoy it as well. Thank you. I'll see you around.